The college football playoff rankings. You already saw that Oregon is ranked 25th. The Ducks are going to play Iowa State, the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, and Tulsa after that last-second loss hangs in. But what about San Jose State? Brett Brennan finishing undefeated.
Good job he's done. Gets them to their first Mountain West Conference championship game. They're able to beat Boise State. And Brennan's been getting some hype about that Arizona job out there in the Pac-12. Maybe he deserves it. He deserves to get that attention. And Nick Starkel, what a career he's had, right? Starts at A&M.
Other than Indiana, you got to throw San Jose State in as one of the great stories of the year. You know, regardless of where they end up ranked, that's great for them.
It was really impressive. We had a wired behind the scenes watching Brennan on College Game Day yesterday.
That was incredible.
Everybody was reacting
we were like, I like that guy.
Like him.
Yeah. I want to play for him.
Oklahoma State at 21. Let's look at 16 through 20 now as we continue to count. Texas hangs in. Louisiana, they were frustrated that they weren't able to play Coastal Carolina again. Coastal Carolina, the only team to beat Billy Napier's Raging Cajuns. They're at 19th, and BYU turning in 16th ranking, going up a spot.
Yeah, and I was really disappointed that that game got canceled. I was looking forward to it, and Coastal Carolina is one of those teams that earned a ton of respect by knocking off BYU, and wanted to see them with another shot at Louisiana getting their chance. Louisiana, a team that, again, a lot of people forget, they knocked off Iowa State to begin this season. That was going to be a fun game to watch. And we talked about those group of 5 teams. If Coastal Carolina ever had any shot of catching up to Cincinnati, it was going to be Saturday. They needed that game.
And they have 2 better wins than Cincinnati has. I mean, both those teams are ahead of Tulsa, who we just saw at 24. So Coastal Carolina definitely has a case. Played more games, more impressive wins. They could have very much be playing Georgia too as well.
That's right. It's a great point that David makes here. Really smart point too. The top ranked group of 5 champion gets a spot in the New Year's Six Bowl. Coastal Carolina put together a really good resume, undefeated record, but Cincinnati ranked higher. Bearcats get the benefit of the doubt, and the Bearcats are going to play Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. There is Coastal Carolina, 11-0 under Jamie Chadwell, ranked 12th. Indiana gets an 11th place.
That's what I was going to say. Indiana, 6-1. They're good enough to be a good mark on the Ohio State schedule, but not quite good enough to get into the New Year's Six. Like, is it because of Penix being out?
It's a different team.
It is, but I'm surprised that Indiana, maybe they got serious consideration. When we were showing all those bowl matchups, I'm just surprised that Indiana, to me, had a historic year, and to be left out, I'm surprised.
Yeah, you do have, you have the affiliation and some of the bowls that are tied together within the New Year's Six, but this year there are more at large spaces than there are in some years, and Indiana not quite getting in, but Tom Allen's team had a terrific season nonetheless. Okay, we know who the top 6 are, but let's count them on down. Iowa State, we showed you they'll be playing Oregon in the Fiesta. They finished at 10th. Georgia is 9th. Georgia playing Cincinnati not far from home in Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Cincinnati's ranked 1 spot ahead, undefeated for Luke Fickell's team, and Florida holds steady at number 7 after coming up just short against Alabama. So here, the top 6, if you happen to just be joining us, Alabama and Notre Dame, 1 versus 4 in the Rose Bowl game, which has been moved to Dallas. We played on New Year's afternoon in the customary time slot. And then the All-State Sugar Bowl will be Clemson and Ohio State from New Orleans on New Year's night, number 2 against number 3. So let's start with the New Year's Six games here, if you want.
Yeah, I just real quick on the committee. I mean, everybody has all the answers. Everybody sits outside of that room, gets on social media, including all of us, and we all, it's all subjective, right? And we all think we can have all the answers and try to come up with who we would put in. But typically, when people are really passionate or emotional about who we would put in, it usually impacts your team and who you want to get in. So if the committee doesn't put in your team, the committee sucks. I mean, they don't know what they're doing. I just think that the committee is put in unprecedented times. I think I'm one of these guys that believes in the committee. I like to think that they're watching the games. Are they perfect every year? Do they always agree with what I would think subjectively? Maybe not. But I think they do a good job personally of trying to come up with the answers. Let's say this group right here tried to come up with the top 10 or top 25 teams. We would disagree, we would agree, we'd put out our list, and everyone would tell us how terrible we are.
Sure.
I mean, that's the position that they're in this world of college football and the subjectivity of the analysis and the rankings.
They tell us how terrible we are, talking about how terrible the committee is. Like we're also terrible, but we're not actually putting anybody in. We're just giving our opinion on what the committee is doing, and we're also labeled as terrible.
It tells you about the emotion of college football, right? Like if we did this, it's what makes it great. Like if we did this for the NFL, and you didn't have a playoffs, you didn't have a format of the NFC East and the AFC West.
Or fantasy football. Yeah,
no, just really listen to me. Like if we were breaking down the Packers, I don't even know who's at the top of the NFL, but we're breaking down subjectively who the best teams are. It would be so different than who actually played in the playoffs based on how they look. Well, the Packers looked really good yesterday against Carolina, or they didn't quite look good enough. They're going to drop down a few spots. And the reality is they have a system. They go in, they play the playoffs, and somebody ends up going to the Super Bowl. In our world, it's not like that. And it's so easy to poke at it.
Hardest year ever to do it.
Too, because there's no non-conference games. There's very few common opponents. You don't have all those different metrics to use and to help them. So the committee's done a good job. They talked about watching the games and watching as much football as possible to try to get the eye test. I think we all talked about on our Tuesday night shows that was going to be a factor and maybe outweighing some of the other ones we've used in years past the committee would have to do, and I think they've done that. They're never going to be perfect. Everyone's going to have an opinion, but I'm perfectly fine with the 4 teams they have in the order they're in.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, we always talk about how would you tweak the system, what would you do differently. Use the NFL for an example. Now, I know the Washington football team is playing better now, and the record is coming back to a more palatable stage. But there was a period of time when teams that were leading the NFC East were like, 2-7 or something like that. If you said, with conference champions or division champions in football, they're making it no matter what. What happens if you have a division like that in college football and then you leave out, some 10-win team that finished second in their division? So there's always a downside. That's my point. It's not going to be perfect. And Kirk said it perfectly. You're not always going to agree with what the committee does because these are subjective judgments.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.